Maha Satipattana Sutta. It's number 22 in Digha Nikaya. Although up to this point, the shorter Satipattana Sutta you find in Majjhima Nikaya 10 and this one have been nearly identical in their content. And only actually near the end of the sutta, when we are covering the arising of suffering, the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path, is the main difference between these two suttas. There's much more detail in this longer Mahasatipatthana Sutta, but only in the section on the Four Noble Truths. So last week we covered the Chittanupasana, or the contemplation of the mind. And we saw that basically that means, learning how to identify the overall kind of mental state that you catch yourself into. So let's say you were, meditating, and all of a sudden you found yourself lost in thought and you noticed you were thinking some sensual desire. So you would recognize, sensual desire is in the mind now, the mind with sensual desire. And, or, hatred or delusion. And basically, these mental states, these first four mental states in a contracted mind, they're basically the same as the hindrances. So the hindrances of sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry and doubts. These mental states cover, for the most part, the five hindrances. And anyway, this week, I'm going to start the section on Dhammanupassana. And the fourth foundation of mindfulness, Dhammanupassana. In many of the translations, you will read this defined or translated as the contemplation of mental objects. Now, kind of mental objects, even though they may be mental objects, I prefer to leave the word Dhamma there, because really it's the Dhamma. And that's what we're studying, isn't it? We're studying the Dhamma. And so contemplation of Dhamma has those five categories. There are the five hindrances, the five aggregates, the sixfold sense sphere, the seven factors of enlightenment, and the Four Noble Truths itself. So you can see these five groups in the Dhammanupassana, they're the main teachings of the Buddha. They're the main teachings of the Dhamma. That's the Dhamma. So it's contemplating the Dhamma. Now within that Dhamma, of course, everything is going through the mind anyway, but still it's contemplating the Dhamma. Because those categories are the main practice, are the main aspects of Dhamma. Now, up until this point, the three foundations of mindfulness that we've been going over are kind of setting the groundwork. And they are helping to develop mindfulness and concentration, a basic mindfulness and concentration. And especially the contemplation of the body, as we've already gone over, helps us to get the mind grounded and centered in the body. Because again, the Buddha has said that the world, the arising of the world, the ceasing of the world, and the path leading to the ceasing of the world are right within this 5 or 6 foot long body, with its nervous system, feelings, memory, and consciousness. And so this is really where we meditate. And so we have to get grounded in the body. And the body is the connection to the present moment. The body is the natural connection to the present moment. Because it's always just here and it's immediate. You can't get away from it unless maybe you're sleeping. And so, and literally it's in front of your face. But it's the only viable or consistent connection we have to the present moment. So therefore, the mindfulness of breathing helps you to bring the mind from the external world and find the external, to find the body, sort of the external body. And then he has us just feel the body, the postures. Now I'm sitting, standing, walking, doing movements. All these are present moment activities. At any time, that's what the body is in one of those postures. So mindfulness of breathing and the mindfulness of postures keeps the attention on the body, and that's developing concentration. The longer you keep the attention on the body without letting it wander, then you're becoming concentrated. That means the hindrances are getting weaker, and the mind is getting more centered and grounded, and then you can start feeling so many more things. So anyway, mindfulness of the body gets, the main purpose of that, from my point of view anyway, is keeping the mind grounded in the present moment and in connection with the sensations. And the aggregate, the first of the 5 aggregates is also the material form, which is this body. Anyway, I'm just wanted to give a brief kind of summary. So the mindfulness of the body gets you grounded in the present moment in the body, and in touch with the sensations, which is the 4 elemental vibrations, the 4 elements. That basically, it means the different vibrations in the body. The material vibrations, that means the vibrations of cells, molecules, atoms, electrons, and so on, all that. Whatever you feel in the body is nothing but the sensations. And then they produce feelings. And so you start to feel, you see how you're affected by pleasant and painful sensations. You form attachments to pleasurable sensations. You have aversion to painful sensations, and the mind is constantly struggling. And so you learn how to observe the sensations. You learn how to develop an equanimity to them. And while you are doing that, you are gaining deeper and deeper mindfulness and concentration. Because, physical pain is what distracts us from being concentrated. So once you can overcome attachment to pleasurable and painful feelings, and just let them come and go in the background, but without letting the mind get carried away, you are gaining deeper concentration. And then the mind states, most of those feelings, the material vibrations and the feelings, are what trigger off all of our thoughts and memories. They trigger off our perceptions, and then our thoughts, memories, and emotions all connected back to this body and the pleasure and pain. The whole life we've been going between pleasure and pain. And even in the present moment, even today, 80% or 90% of the things that you do are based on trying to get some pleasurable feeling or get away from a painful feeling from obvious gross things to very subtle things. So, and then the mental states included those five hindrances, although they weren't mentioned as hindrances. But you have to, they are, because a mind with greed means sensual desire. And to know how does this sensual desire, how does this greed arise? How does it cease? So anyway, these first three foundations of mindfulness, all along you've been developing mindfulness and concentration. And now you come to this Dhammanupassana. And so by now you should be well grounded and centered in the body in the present moment with good mindfulness, being able to let go of these feelings and sensations, being trapped in them, and being tuned into, to the flow of impermanence. So now, in this Dhammanupassana, the five hindrances are mentioned as this first category of Dhamma. And it's mentioned first in this category of Dhamma, and it's also, as we just saw, it was mentioned in the Chittanupasana also. Because as long as you are being frequently disturbed by the five hindrances, you're not going to gain much deep awareness. You're not going to be able to have the clarity to develop deeper insights. So again, these five hindrances, as we well know already, sense desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and doubts. So in the sutta, and I'm just going to read this. Here a monk abides contemplating the Dhamma as Dhamma in respect of the five hindrances, or mind objects as mind objects, but I prefer to use the word Dhamma. And how does he do that? If sensual desire is present, they know that it's present. If his sensual desire is absent, he knows that it's absent. And he knows how the unarisen sensual desire comes to arise. And he knows how and how the abandoning of the sensual desire comes about. And he knows how the non-arising of the abandoned sensual desire in the future will come about. So this is important. So first you have to identify it, as I mentioned just shortly ago. Let's say you're meditating, trying to count your breaths, or just, whatever you're meditating on, but then, you start getting caught up in some thought, and you have to recognize it. And you identify if it's a thought of some pleasurable object, could be any one of the thinking about food, thinking about smells or taste, or but generally it would be some visible object, or even a mental fantasy. Maybe you are entertaining some mental fantasy, so you have to recognize sensual desire is arisen, and then you have to understand, how did this sensual desire arise? How did it arise? So this is a kind of an examining type of Chintamaya Panya, investigation of Dhamma. Also the Dhamma Vichaya is part of that. So you understand how it arises? Well, it arises because we are paying attention to the marks of beauty or desire in whatever memory, if it's a memory of something, and then that it gets triggered off, and then it arises. And then we go on entertaining it and thinking about it. And how does it cease? When you apply those antidotes. And, like in the Vitaka Santana Sutta, the dealing with distracting thoughts, you have to see this sensual desire as a hindrance. If you don't see it as a hindrance, you're going to just, as a hindrance to your meditation. I mean, you sat down to meditate, right? And now your mind is entertaining this sensual desire. So you have to understand how it arose, because we've also cultivated the habit of it. We've practiced the habit, for so long. And we practice it in our daily life. And as long as we're practicing it in our daily life, by looking at magazines or just wanting to go into smell the nice things, pastry shops, or any kind of desires. So we have to recognize that and apply the antidotes, thinking about the impure aspects too, and seeing the danger in cultivating these. And as I mentioned, I highly advise you to look up on that book the Five Hindrances and Their Conquest by Nyanaponiketera. He can do a much better job explaining about all the different things connected with each hindrance, and I can just pull out of my memory at the moment. So I would recommend reading that again. So you have to understand how they arise and how do they cease again. You have to understand how they arise, how we nurture them, but then how we can let go of them and how they subside. Again, usually by thinking on the opposite nature of them. Like with hatred, you try to cultivate metta. And how do they abandon? So how do we abandon those hindrances? By applying the antidotes and those other suggestions. And how do they cease arising in the future? That's the thing. How do they cease arising in the future? Well, only when your mindfulness is developed to a very high degree, where you can nip it in the bud, you can see it, just as it's arising, or within a second or two after it's arisen, you can catch it quickly before it has triggered off all kinds of memories. And you can kind of nip it in the bud, so to speak, and weaken its power. Or you abandon it, you cut it off by attaining the stage of the once returning. So only when you reach the second stage of enlightenment or awakening, you reach the state of the once returning. That is when only sense desire and ill will, both of these, are only attenuated. That means that they're still there in the unconscious mind, but they're very weak. And it's only when your buttons are pushed hard enough that you can notice that there's still sense desire and ill will in you. And only with the state of the never returner are sense desire and ill will totally removed. So that is how the abandoning of the sensual desire is, it doesn't arise again. Or how the non-arising of the abandoned ill will in the future will come about by attaining the stages of awakening. So, and the same thing is repeated for the sense desire and the ill will. When it arises, how it ceases and how it arises, because you're holding on to memories and asserting your right to, dislike this person, have negative thoughts. They did this to me, they did that to me, and so on. And then if you catch yourself, nodding out and sleeping, that is the sloth and torpor. And there's different causes of that. Not getting enough rest or overeating can be a cause of that. Sloth and torpor, if you eat too much and try to meditate afterwards. Or if it's, too hot sometimes. But there's a lot of different causes of that. We may not be able to know exactly what the causes. But even too much thinking can make the mind tired and want to go to sleep. It gets tired of hearing itself rant on and so on. And then the restlessness and worry. This is usually about having done things that you shouldn't have done and not have done things that you should have done, or worrying about them, like maybe breaking a precept, or just worrying about, am I going to pass my exam, or I'm worrying about a number of things. Could be so many things. And so you understand how, those arise, how they cease, and how they can keep from ceasing in the future. And then also doubts. And this usually is about doubts about the Dhamma, doubts about yourself, whether you have what it takes to really practice the Dhamma. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to enter the stream in this lifetime. Some people might have this idea, somebody might have planted it in your mind. Even in Sri Lanka, there was an idea when I first came to Sri Lanka back in 1974. It was at a Wesak time, and I met some Sri Lankan people, and they knew I was really keen on Buddhism. They said, well, why is so interested in all this meditation? People can't even attain Satipattana anymore now. The world's too much full of sin and delusion. I said, what? And I couldn't believe I was hearing this, from a Sinhalese Buddhist. But anyway, that wasn't the isolated incident. It was a prevailing belief, at least back in those days. I don't know about now. But certainly if you harbor that kind of an idea that it's not even possible to become a Sotapanna in this life, then you're defeated without even trying. So, overcoming those five hindrances. It's only overcoming them that then we can gain concentration. And that's why the Buddha put so much emphasis on that and made that the first category of Dhammanupassana. And then now I wanted to start also the section on the five aggregates, because the next section of contemplation is the five aggregates itself, and that's the most important category of Dhamma that there is, in my opinion, because the Buddha, in the very first noble truth, said, in short, it's these five aggregates of clinging are dukkha. So right there, at the very outset of the Four Noble Truths, the five aggregates are front and center as being the main culprit. In short, you can think about all the other types of sufferings, physical suffering, sickness, old age, and death, mental suffering, not getting what you want, getting what you don't want. But then the Buddha said, in short, these five aggregates of clinging are dukkha. So that's why it's also given an important spot along with the hindrances. So as soon as those hindrances subside enough that you can then contemplate, then that's, I mean, when the five hindrances subside, when you gain concentration, even at the stage of access concentration, not even the full first jhana yet, but let's say, what they call access concentration, where some of the jhana factors are being experienced, but they're not fully established. And there still can be some wandering thoughts, but there's enough clarity and concentration there that you can still effectively develop insight and start observing impermanence. So the five aggregates, the first one, we've talked about this again on many occasions, but still a lot of people say they have trouble understanding it. So the five aggregates are the material form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. And this is not some pie in the sky kind of theories. People say, five aggregates, oh, Buddhist theories. No, it's not a theory. It's who you are. It's every second of your waking life, even sleeping life. There's nothing apart from these five aggregates. So it's only when one has effectively weakened those hindrances that you can more clearly see the five. And then again, that's why the hindrances were mentioned first. And how do you contemplate the five aggregates? Well, with the arising of form, one recognizes, this is material form. And such is the arising of material form, such is the ceasing of material form. And material form basically are the four elements, as we covered back in the contemplation of the body. And it's basically the sensory objects. So material form is not only this material body, but when you see something, the color vibrations striking your eye, that's material form. Sound vibration on your ear, or the object impinging and the vibration of hearing, that's a material form. Odor is material form. Taste is material form. Let's say sugar or sweet taste or grapefruit, kind of a tart taste. That flavor is also considered a material form. And then all the sensations in the body. So you recognize that this is material form. Of course, it's always going on, so you don't have to at every moment saying this is material form. We already know it. And you've already been practicing that anyway back in the first foundation of mindfulness. So you should be well familiar with this by now. You should have become grounded in the body, being able to hold your attention there with the sensations, because all the sensations, all the Vedanas are Vedanas from the material form, from the impact of the material form. And basically that, again, it just means the cells, molecules, atoms that comprise any type of material object. So you understand how it arises and how it's continually changing. By feeling how, like all the sensations in the body. When you're well concentrated in the body, you can feel so many sensations that are constantly arising and vanishing, and then sounds arising and vanishing through the ears. And so how does material form arises? Because of contact. when you're sleeping, then there's not much material form arising because your senses are basically kind of cut off. So you're not hearing much, seeing, smelling, tasting. So that's why the consciousness of the world basically ceases, because it needs that contact. The senses have to be functioning, and there has to be attention there. So that's not there during the sleep. And of course, when you attain the higher jhanas, then especially the formless jhanas, if you're been able to attain some formless jhanas, then you go beyond the impingement of the sensory, of the five senses. So therefore, you temporarily escape that the arising of material form in the mental process. Of course, and totally the disappearance of the material form is when those contacts cease, the form ceases. So, a sound like this voice you're hearing now, you're hearing material form. And now I stopped talking there for a few seconds. So that was a ceasing of the material form. Now it's arising again because, these lips are producing sound vibrations, are coming to your ear, and the material form is arising in your mind. Now, when I stop again, that particular material form ceased. So it's like with all the other senses too, because of contact, the material form arises. When the contact is finished, the material form ceases. But the mind can go on still thinking about the material form because it recreates that memory of the material form and the thoughts about it within the mind. But that's another thing. So one contemplates this material form and then the feelings that arise based on the material form. We've already talked a lot about them before, so I'm not going to dwell on them too much. And then the perception. So the body and feeling are already covered in the first and second foundation of mindfulness. So you already have been contemplating those two aggregates all along. So you should be a master of it by now, or at least, you should be well familiar with it. And then the perception. So perception is something that's not mentioned directly in the, in the first and second aggregate. But the perception is still there because you perceive a painful feeling or a pleasant feeling. The perception has to be there. But basically, perception is how the mind mentally pictures. Basically, it's the kind of names and labels that pop out of your mind whenever you are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching something. The memory of what it is comes into your mind. So it's the way the mind kind of recreates the material vibration, matches it up in the memory, and the mind creates this perception. And it stands out from the other things around it because of especially when you have the attachment to it. We get attached to the perceptions because basically they're all the objects of our world. Anything that you have a word for is a perception because you have a mental idea of what that word means. If I say anything, your mother or your father, that's just a word, right? But boom, your mind will think of your mother or father. Or their picture might come into your mind, or your pet dog or your cat or anything. Favorite kind of food, smell. So these perceptions are, within the brain and in the mind, the unconscious mind. And whenever we have contact, the feeling and perceptions automatically come out. And we get attached to the perception. Perceptions are very important because feelings, you can't kind of, they're kind of nebulous. I mean, you directly feel a painful feeling, right? But you may not know exactly what it is or where it is immediately. You have to kind of think about it for a minute, and then you realize, oh, that's a pain in my stomach. It's a stomach pain, or that's a pain in my eye. So this the perception. The mind has located this painful feeling, and this perception of the body part or any other object comes into the mind. And then we cling to that because that's what we identify as myself, this body and the body parts. My nails, teeth, skin, flesh, hair, so on. These are perceptions, and we cling to them as being I, me, or mine. And, and anything else in the world. So understanding when these perceptions and how we are clinging to the perception. And all these perceptions are associated with that feeling and the material vibration that initially triggered off the feeling. So this process of the five aggregates, actually, these are not like, this is a process that happens in the mind in a nanosecond. These things arise. And it's not easy. It's not like the, form arises in 1 second and feeling arises in the second and perception arises. It's more like nanoseconds that the brain is processing this. So we don't really see them coming and going. And that's why we don't see the arising and vanishing of them. Only when, they're lasting for a longer time. And then the sankharas are the habits that are triggered off based on the perception. Now, with the first 3 foundations of mindfulness, these are, you can't really stop them. I mean, they're the result of the past karma, and they arise. So you can't prevent these material vibrations from coming. You can't even prevent the feelings from coming. Only if you attain the very highest jhana, the cessation of feeling and perception. But let's figure out, 1 in a billion people probably can do that. So for all intents and purposes, you cannot stop perception. But so they arise. But between perception and the volition, that is the important thing. Now, if you have very good mindfulness and you have wisdom and you can stop, you stop clinging to the perception, you can restrain the reaction to it. In other words, let's say somebody says, oh, there's a bug on your body. So you hear the term bug, that's a perception. Immediately that perception has an aversion to it. But if you can see that, aversion, and bug, it's not a big deal. And you can reflect on it, you might be able to stop that reaction. In other words, not raise up your hand to want to, take it off or something. Or if you hear a loud sound, wanting to turn your head and look. Oftentimes those reactions happen, in a split second. But so that's the crucial kind of when you're practicing mindfulness, when you're practicing the vipassana meditation. This is really what you're training in. You're aware of what material form is and the feelings and the perceptions. You can't really stop them, but you can stop reacting to them, like the painful feeling. You can learn to endure it, relax around it. You're not going to stop it, but you can stop trying to scratch the itch or move your posture, right? So what we're doing is we're restraining the sankhara, which is the habit that we've practiced in the past. And these are repeated every time with the similar types of feeling and perceptions, material vibration, feeling and perception. That reaction is going to just repeat itself as a habit. Only until you develop mindfulness and wisdom. First, you become mindful, you apply your wisdom to seeing this particular material form, feeling, perception as being anicca, dukkha, and anatta, and to restrain that reaction. And the reaction, of course, is basically the karma. So that's why these five aggregates are important in understanding them. And to understand the process of them, and to, that's what, after getting centered and grounded in the body, once you've achieved mindfulness and concentration, that means centered and grounded in the body with the hindrances not affecting you too much, that is when automatically you'll be able to see these things quite clearly. You pay your attention to it. And then, of course, the last of these hindrances, the last of the five aggregates is the consciousness. We'll talk more about that, I think, next week. But basically, it's the consciousness and the idea that, it's the knowing faculty. Consciousness, without consciousness, you wouldn't even be aware of material form. You wouldn't be aware of feeling. You wouldn't be aware of perception or volition. It's the consciousness, which is the consciousness, right? The awareness. But we cling to it as being I, me, or mine. We identify it as being I, me, or mine. And we'll talk more about that next week, because it's it's kind of it's very important to understand it. And so now I wanted to see if there's any questions based on these, any things that I've been talking about this evening in terms of the five hindrances or these five aggregates. So let's see if any chats here. Let's go back to number 1. Okay, somebody put that book, Five Hindrances book up there. Okay, this question, if mind is deeply concentrated on solving a computer problem, considering various alternatives, and assessing their effectiveness, what kind of mental status should we assign it? It has no greed or hatred. It is concentrated, but not on one object, but on a concept. It is not distracted. It has no concept of I. Well, there might be a desire to solve the problem. Maybe you have some pride and say, oh, maybe a lot of people, try to solve the problem and, oh, maybe I can do it, So, I mean, or of course that's your job and, you have to earn money. So, yeah, a lot of our thinking doesn't necessarily have any overt greed or so on to it, or aversion or doubts or restlessness, but on very subtle levels, it may occur, or you're simply attached to the mind state of thinking. So, just thinking, random thinking is, even if it's not obvious that it has any kind of specific hindrance there, just knowing that the mind is addicted to thinking and the ego is there. The ego likes to think, because if you stop thinking, the sense of I starts to vanish. So you don't want to lose that feeling of I, because the I wants to be in control. So there is that delusion there. you're deluded that there's an I that's doing this, again, on a subtle level. So he says, well, it's you have no concept of I, so it can't be deluded. The concept of I can be there on a very subtle level. We don't always know it. I mean, even right now, the concept of I may not be totally in your mind, but it's still there. Because if it wasn't, you would enter an altered state of consciousness and definitely know it. It would be very radical if there was no trace of I, concept of I in your consciousness. For one thing, you'd be an arahant, or you'd be in the state of nibbana. So it's there on subtle levels. But again, it's the mental states and the hindrances that are there that we do get obsessed with, and that we go on creating some unwholesome karma based on them. Those are the ones that we should pay the most attention to. And once the mind stops having a lot of these distracting thoughts and so on, then you start to just be aware of the space in which those thoughts are coming and going, and the awareness, the present moment awareness, and then as the sutta says, at the end of each section of the sutta, it says, or else. Okay, we contemplate, how does this greed arise? How does it cease? How will it stop to cease in the future? Is this or that different mental state? Is this a deluded? He said, or else just simply mental states exist. These hindrances exist only for gaining knowledge and awareness, and you detach from them if you're able to. And you're not attached to anything in the world. So you don't have to go on contemplating this all the time. If you have that ability to just simply detach from them and to enter into that state of, awareness, then if you can hold that long enough without any attention going to any of those mental states and so on, then that's the way that you gain insights, and eventually that you could experience the mind entering that stream, or experience a momentary, cessation of the conditioned world, or the cessation of clinging to the five aggregates. This other question. I've always associated the 52 mental factors with the five aggregates mental volitions. Am I incorrect to do so? No, they are also that. But I wouldn't limit it to just that. 52 mental factors, basically, those are basically the chaitasikas. And they include, all the volitions and intentions. That's right. All the 52 mental factors, these are enumerated in the Abhidhamma. But they basically, everything that we do is included in those 52 mental factors. It's just that, Abhidhamma wanted to, get too much detail and go in and give them some separate classification. But basically, there's Sankara Kanda, which include all of the types of emotions and greed, hatred, and delusion, and the wholesome mental states too. So, they're included in the Chittanupasana, they're included in the five hindrances. Those are all part of the mental factors too. The 7 factors of enlightenment. Okay, friends. So that's the end of those questions. Does anybody have a last question they might want to ask by raising their hand?
Bhante, this is Prashant.
Yes.
So Bhante, this like we know that 37 factors of enlightenment, and I believe this fourth foundation covered many of them. But how about Noble Eightfold Path? I think that is very one of the 37 factors. It's part of 37 factors of enlightenment. Is it also part of this particular sutta as well?
Absolutely. Hey. That's what makes the difference between Maha Satipattana Sutta and the regular Satipattana Sutta. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this talk, the difference between the Maha Satipattana Sutta and the regular Satipattana Sutta is the section on the Four Noble Truths. And what is the fourth noble truth? The Eightfold Path. So definitely it's included in there, you know. The Four Noble Truths are included in it. And in the Four Noble Truths is every other aspect of Dhamma is included in the Four Noble Truths, you know. Suffering the cause, the five hindrances, enlightenment factors, the Four Noble Truths themselves, the Eightfold Path, they're all included. And that's why they're Dhamma. That's why it's called Dhammanupassana. You're contemplating the Four Noble Truths. But I'm going to go into that more detail when we get there. I'm just, trying to bide time, right? And just go over slowly and hopefully, create a foundation where, you can understand them.
On the other hand, Bhante, now in the 37 factors of enlightenment, I don't hear five aggregates, it's like, but as separate, but they mention the four frames of references. So under the four frames of references, automatically we can assume that five aggregates are there.
The four frames of reference, you mean four
part of the 37. Four frames of references are like four foundation of mindfulness are part of 37 factors of enlightenment. Is that correct?
Of course. What is, don't make it so complicated,
but that's very nice. And in the case of the Bhaskar's questions, when we are solving a computer problem, but then we are completely engaging with our five aggregates. So, and we tend to get lost into that, like we're just playing with our five aggregates. We are not, when you say, his question is like, in that particular, while we are solving the problem, we are engrossed in it. Like in a way, as part of mindfulness practice, we can also be aware that, hey, I'm doing this, I'm engaged in this, so that's how
yeah, but you're carried away in thoughts. You're not really mindful of the present moment. You're probably not even aware of your body and so on. Or you may not even aware of your thinking. That awareness is like a separate thing that's observing what you're doing. When you're engrossed in a problem, you're not really observing what you're doing. You're so into doing it that there's not this separation occurring where you can just watch, like when you're meditating, okay, sitting, breathing, okay, you just watch almost like watching the body sitting and breathing there, or watching yourself thinking. So you don't have that kind of mental space when you are totally caught up in whether it's working, if you're trying to pound a nail or got concentrating on a saw blade, you're really focused there. You lose that kind of detached awareness. So therefore, it's a contracted state of mind when you're totally absorbed in something like that.
So we can say that we are completely identified with that work, and that is our I, that is our consciousness, and that's
yes, but you're not thinking of the I at that moment. As I mentioned before, these things are very subtle. And, they might disappear on the surface, but they immediately come back once you get out of that particular type of concentration. And that's why, when you attain some jhanas and you can transcend the ego temporarily, but you did that through concentration, not through developing insight into anatta. Therefore, you don't attain enlightenment necessarily with just attaining jhanas or formless jhanas. That you've got to go on to develop that insight into no self, because the ego and the thought of self and the other hindrances only go into abeyance because of whatever concentration and preoccupation you're caught up into. But as soon as you stop with that, they all comes back.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay? Okay, friends, so let's take a few minutes break and then come back. Hope I can get the yoga thing set up. There's no technical advisor here to advise me. Hopefully I can do that. Okay, see you back in a few minutes.
Bhante, you have to go back, Bhante. Just can.
Is that better, Prashant?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay. So go ahead and stand straight, relax your arms and hands at the sides. Feel your feet pressing the floor. Begin some deep, slow breathing, holding the air in the lungs 2 or 3 seconds, and slowly breathing out. Deep, slow breathing is to bring the mind into the body, get it grounded and centered, the material form. Just breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. On the next in breath, raise the arms over the head, interlock the fingers, turn the palms up, straighten the arms, stretch your head back, arch your lower back. On the out breath, turn the hands down, touch the top of your head. In these exercises, generating body sensations, getting inside the body. Again, in breath, arms up. Out breath, touch the head. In. Third time, hold the upward stretch longer. Bend backwards a little more. Feel the sensations. And release the fingers. Out breath, back to the side. Just feel those kind of subtle sensations in the hands and fingers. That's the material vibration, the material form. And then the mind perceives it, the perception of my hands, the perception might be a painful feeling or a pleasant feeling. All 3 aggregates right there. On the next in breath, push up on the toes, raising the arms over the head in this way, facing the hands toward each other and stretch. Out breath, come back down. Just feeling the sensation. Again, in breath up. Out. Again, in breath. Out. Relax. Just keep feeling the body again. It's the sensation body. Just cultivate this Chintamaya Panya, reflective wisdom. What you're feeling is just sensations, not a body. Body is a perception that you cling to. In reality, what consciousness actually experiences is material vibration of a pleasant, painful, or neutral quality. The mind does everything else. Oh, that's this, and that, blah, 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 blah. Just letting all of that go, just resting in the present moment. Okay, next we'll do knee bending. So on an in-breath, push up on the toes, raise the arms up front for balance. Out-breath, bend the knees, lower down into the squatting position if you can. Feel a sensation. In-breath, lift up. All the way up on the toes. If you have bad knees, you might feel a painful sensation. In. Out. In. The out breath, relax. Don't really relax, stay mindful. Feeling sensation. Are they pleasant, painful, or neutral? What are you calling them? That's my this, that's my that. Perception. Just remember standing, standing. Identifying the consciousness as I am standing, that's clinging to the aggregate of consciousness. Okay, now spread the legs apart about 3 feet. We'll do side bending. Let the hands touch your sides. Breathe in. Out breath, bend over the right side. Let the right hand slide down below the knee. Feel the stretch sensation. In breath up. And the other side, out breath. in. Again, out breath. In. Once more to each side, out breath. Just relax. And bring the feet together. Just one last exercise, the head turning from right to left. And the in-breath, turn the head to the right. Out breath, left. Let the head stop in the center. Just mentally feel the standing body. It's a mental perception, the idea of a standing body. It's just comprised of so many thousands of different material vibrations. It's the mosaic of different vibrations. That's how perception arises, the mind turning empty vibrations into some kind of solid object. Okay, let's come back to our seats and get ready for the sitting meditation. Okay, friends, go ahead and sit straight. Just feel the buttocks and feet pressing the floor underneath. Try to keep the back and the spine and the head in a straight line. Start to feel or imagine the body sitting like a Buddha. Now then focus the attention down to where the buttocks press the floor. Feel that earth element, material vibration, the earth element of bones and flesh of the body pressing the cushion, mat, or floor underneath. And that produces the perception of I'm sitting. Just mentally feel the way the legs are bent underneath and feeling the feet and toes. So feel those subtle sensations, either the clothing touching the skin or pulse of blood or other subtle body sensation, or any aches or pain. Just bringing the attention to the body, finding the outer body, feeling the inner body. And feel your hands and fingers touching. Hands touching is the outer body. The idea of the hands is the perception, then feeling the material vibration, and the subtle pulse of blood in the hands is a pleasant sensation. Whatever aggregate is noticeable in the mind, you simply register that. Oh, this is the aggregate of material vibration. This is feeling, this is perception. And feel the arms hanging from the shoulders. Relax the shoulders. Try to feel where the clothing touches the skin of the shoulders or arms, producing the material vibration. Depending on the contact, arises the material vibration, the perception, feeling. And feeling the head balanced on top. Start to feel the sensations on your face. Lots of little subtle sensations on your face, the forehead, the nose, the cheeks, the lips. If any of those are pleasant or painful, it's just feeling. You identify something, it's a perception. It's my nose, it's my lips, it's a perception. And now just let the awareness rest behind your eyes. Just to feel the eyes in the socket. Just feel those sensations, material vibration. You might see some color or mental image or some patterns or light. Those are perceptions. From that point behind the eyes, just let the camera lens of awareness just open up to feel the outline of the sitting body, all those different parts of the body can be noticed in one glance in a general way. The head on top, the arms and hands in the middle, legs and feet below. There's a sort of silhouette of the sitting body, of sensation. It's not a visual image, but it's like a collage of material vibration, giving rise to the idea of a sitting body, which is the perception. That's how you contemplate the aggregate. You now take a few deep, slow breaths to oxygenate the blood. Hold the air in the lungs for a few seconds to feel that pause. Let all the oxygen out of the lung. Feel the relaxing contraction of the out breath. And feel the last bit of air go out of the lung. Feeling all those material vibrations. Just breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Just feel all those material vibrations. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. It's the natural present moment awareness grounded in the sitting body. It's the natural connection to the present moment awareness. Especially on the out breath, try to feel the last bit of air go out of the lung. And feel that brief pause. Feel the sitting body, subtle vibration. And then the next in breath. This breathing body is where all the other aggregates arise. Pleasant, painful sensations, neutral sensations. And the perceptions in the mental process. So all these three aggregates, material vibration, feeling, and the perception arise basically automatically. You can't stop them. Understanding how they arise, because we have this body and the contacts through the body, feelings, perceptions arise on their own. You don't really have to do much. And they're basically harmless also. Material vibrations, feelings, perceptions. You really can't do anything without the sankharas, without the thought and the habits, which are the sankharas. You create the karma. If you can just observe and let the aggregates of material vibration, feelings, perceptions, just continually just coming and going in the flow of impermanence. Letting go of any hindrances, urges. By being mindful, we can see the urge to move or the urge to think. We can restrain those urges, restrain the reaction, just let them go. If there's any thought of I, me, or mine coming up, it's attachment to the consciousness. The thought of I, me, or mine is a mental bubble, perception. A mind with delusion, thinking that this I, me, or mine is something real. And if the mind becomes consumed by any hindrance, contemplate, how did this hindrance arise? What feeds it? How does it cease? How does it ultimately stop coming in the future? Whenever there's nothing particular to occupy the mind, and just knowing these five aggregates exist just for the sake of developing knowledge and awareness, not clinging to anything of the past or future, experiencing the liberating present moment awareness. there's too many thoughts or the mind is drowsy, take a few deep, slow breaths to awaken the awareness in the body. The flow of material vibration. If any sounds are heard in your house, know that is also material vibration. If any mental pictures or labels arise, that's perception. Let's try to feel subtler or finer material vibration, perception, the thoughts, urges arising deep in the mind. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Material vibrations, feelings, perceptions, thoughts continually coming and going. Even thoughts of I, me, or mine are just bubbles of a thought moving through the space of awareness. Just establishing that understanding that these five aggregates are there, but without clinging to them, using them for developing knowledge of impermanence and no self, without clinging to anything in the world. And that's how a person abides contemplating the five aggregates and the five aggregates. Contemplating the Dhamma in the Dhamma. What perception arises based on that material vibration? Sabbe sankhara anicchati. Sabbe sankhara dukkati. Sabbe dhamma anattati. Yada panyaya pasati. Atani bindati dukkhi. Isamago visuddhiya. All conditioned things, these five aggregates, are impermanent. They arise only to pass away. Clinging to impermanent things with ignorance brings stress and suffering. And all the conditioned dhammas, the five aggregates, as well as the unconditioned, deathless state, have no owner or controller. They are not I, me, or mine. They are not self. When one understands these three characteristics with the eye of wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity, to freedom. And thus spoke the Buddha. Okay, now take a deep, slow breath. Straighten up the body. Now, I invite you to join in chanting the word sadhu. Slowly, we do the chanting on a long out breath. If you feel like chanting, you can join me. So breathe in. Sadhu. Now place the hands at the edge of your knees. Take one more deep in breath as you breathe in. Stretch your head back. Pull the hands against the knees to arch your spine. Feel the sensation. And lift the head up on the out breath. Press the chin to the top of the chest to stretch the neck vertebrae. And lift the chin up level on an in breath. And relax on the out breath. Put a smile on your face. Okay, friends. So I hope you're able to have insightful meditation. And I hope you're able to get a feeling of, be able to identify some of the aggregates as they try to pull your mind. The body saying, look at me, worry about me. The feelings are saying, get away from me. Or hold me. Perceptions, look at me. But the insight meditator sees them all as like fleeting water bubbles, just rides the present moment awareness without getting bogged down. Anyway, friends, I hope you're able to continue your meditations through the week. And now I'm going to, last Sunday, for those of you who are listening, I said that this coming Sunday, the 12th of June, I'm going to be giving a Dhamma talk and meditation on a different Zoom channel, which belongs to the Washington Buddhist Vihara. But it's at the same time as I give the normal Sunday program from 2 to 4. Although, and I said I was going to send that link to that program out on my newsletter that I sent out, I think on Monday. But I didn't do it. So maybe I lost my mindfulness. I didn't remember to attach that flyer that has the link. So therefore, I might be sending out an additional email on the email list, hopefully before, before too long. Maybe by tomorrow or the next day, I might need Prashant's help to figure out how to get this link on my email. But anyway, just look out for that in your email. Otherwise, if you log into this Zoom link at 2 o'clock on Sunday, I don't know what you'll find, maybe nothing. Or they'll say no program, or I'm not sure. Maybe, I don't know, Prashant, you can hear me there? Can you be able, if you got that link, could you somehow?
Yeah, actually, let's send the link out, I think.
Yeah, I'll try to send the link. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, we can talk tomorrow morning.
We're at the mercy of all this tech stuff, so anyway. Okay, so be well, be safe, be happy, be mindful. Mindfulness. Go away.
Sadhu.
Thank you, Bhante. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks. You're welcome.
Thank you, Bhante.
Bhante.